Whether it be books, film, video games, etc., vampires have been and are still a common theme when it comes to what comes to mind when we think of the things that go bump in the night. But as history has proven, the things of our nightmares commonly have their beginnings in reality. Tonight's countdown: 5 real-life vampires. The Alnwick Castle vampire actually predates the term vampire. In fact, almost 800 years before Bram Stoker's Dracula was even a forethought. The events were recorded by an English chronicler named William of Newburgh. He reported the story of a man who returned from the dead after he died while spying on his cheating wife. He was crouched on the roof and fell. He then returned as a revenant, a walking, rotting corpse, spreading plague in his wake. Eventually, a priest gathered some of his parishioners and found the vampire's grave. They opened it and stabbed the corpse with a shovel. Warm blood ran from the body and confirmed their suspicions that it had been drinking the blood of the living. They burned the body, and the attacks ceased. Yurei Grando was a peasant from Istria, Croatia who died in 1656. He terrorized villagers in the area for 16 years after his death. Official documents from that time name him a strigan, the local word at the time for vampire. Yurei Grando's case is important in vampire folklore as it was the first time in history that a word meaning vampire was officially applied to a person. According to locals, he would wander the village at night and knock on people's doors. Whoever's door he knocked on would die. Eventually, a local priest took a stand and went out to face him. Grando was no match for the priest, who warded him off with a crucifix. The priest and some of the villagers chased him back to the grave, dug him up, and then decapitated the corpse. The tale of the Goreball vampire started with a rumor that a vampire with iron teeth was at the Goreball graveyard in Glasgow, Scotland. The vampire had apparently taken 2 children. Within a few hours, the graveyard was full of children with makeshift weapons like sticks and knives, hunting for the vampire. Authorities blamed the occurrence on hysteria and the influence of American comics like Tales from the Crypt, but it has since been pointed out that there were no comics from this period featuring vampires with iron teeth. There weren't many tales of vampires in America, until the dark discovery of a grave in Griswold, Connecticut in 1990. The grave contained the bodies of farmers from the 1700s. All were normal except for one. One of the bodies had been beheaded, and its skeleton was rearranged into the shape of a Jolly Roger. It was decided that this wasn't just a simple grave robbery, as it had been done 10 years after death and no valuables were removed. It mirrored a case in neighboring Jewett City, where, around the same time, 29 bodies were exhumed post-mortem and burned. This was something of a vampire epidemic. The most famous case from this time is that of Mercy Brown, a girl who died from tuberculosis. Sometime later, the rest of her family started to fall ill and die one by one, until Mercy's body was dug up, found to be remarkably undecayed and badly burned. In 1969, dead animals, completely drained of blood and sporting neck wounds, began to appear in Highgate Cemetery in London. The witnesses reported a tall, dark figure that emitted an evil aura and had a hypnotic stare. One man reported that he became confused and totally lost when trying to leave the cemetery. Suddenly, he found himself facing the Highgate Vampire, which mesmerized him, freezing him in his tracks. After a while, the figure disappeared. Reports in the press led to the graveyard being trampled by an army of self-proclaimed vampire hunters. They dug up several graves, leading conservationists to lobby for the graveyard to be closed at night. Eventually, sightings and reports of the vampire decreased. There we have it, another reminder that the creatures of our legends usually have at least a little bit of basis in reality. Thanks for watching, and be sure to join me next week for another episode of Miss Lovely's Legends and Lore.